a primordial female spirit, also called, is said to dwell in the Amazon River. According to legend, she is the keeper of the river's secrets and the protector of all who live there. When you hear her name, you might think of a snake or a big cat, creatures that prowl the jungle alone and disappear into the brush before anyone can get a good look at them. That's exactly the kind of animal legends are made of. Elusive, powerful, and mysterious. Boiúna's origins are murky, and she has no discernible form. It's as if she's deliberately chosen to keep herself hidden from the prying eyes of mortals. Only the indigenous tribes along the river have any hope of catching a glimpse of her, but even they are wary of trying, because according to legend, those who see her seldom live to tell the tale. One story goes that she was once a beautiful princess who was transformed into a giant serpent by a jealous witch. Another says she's the daughter of the sun god, banished from the sky for falling in love with a mortal. But, whatever her story, she's an ancient spirit who's been around since the beginning of time. She lives deep in the river, in the places where sunlight can't reach, and she's surrounded by the spirits of animals, plants, and rocks. People say she's wise beyond measure, knowing the secrets of life, death, and everything in between, and she's not afraid to use her knowledge to protect the things she loves. This is a story about a fisherman who learned that lesson the hard way. One day, he was out on the river when he saw a huge green serpent slithering toward him. He tried to run, but it was too late. The snake wrapped itself around him and squeezed tight. And then he heard a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "You have trespassed on my waters," it said. "Now it's time to pay the price." The fisherman panicked. He struggled against the snake's coils, but it was no use. He was trapped. And then the snake started to squeeze tighter and tighter, until he could feel his bones cracking. "Please, please forgive me," he begged. "I didn't mean to upset you. I'll never come into your waters again." The snake paused, and for a moment the fisherman could breathe again. "You'll trespass on my waters again," the voice said, "and I won't be so merciful. Remember that." And with that, the snake slithered away, and the fisherman was free. From that day on, he never fished in the river again. Instead, he spent his days telling stories about the terrible serpent, warning everyone to stay away from her domain. Is the Boiúna a benevolent spirit or a terrifying monster? It all depends on who you ask. Some say she's the embodiment of the river itself, a force of nature that must be respected. Others say she is a cruel and vengeful goddess who takes great pleasure in punishing those who disrespect her. But one thing's for sure, she is a creature of immense power, and anyone who crosses her is in for a world of hurt. For example, let's consider the case of Ignacio de Loyola, a Spanish missionary who tried to convert the indigenous people of the Amazon to Christianity. He traveled up the river in a canoe with a group of followers, and they soon encountered a tribe of natives who worshipped the boa. When the tribe saw Ignacio and his party, they were outraged and warned them to turn back or face the consequences. But Ignacio was a man on a mission, and he refused to listen. He pushed on up the river, and soon his canoe was surrounded by giant snakes that blocked their path. Ignacio drew his sword and hacked at the serpents, but they just kept coming. And then one of them lunged forward and coiled itself around his canoe, and from the top of the biggest snake, a woman emerged. She was tall and beautiful, with skin the color of burnished gold and hair like a waterfall of green, and as she stepped out onto the deck of the canoe, Ignacio could feel his heart pounding in his chest. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaking. "And what do you want?" The woman smiled and said, "I am the spirit of this river, and you have trespassed on my domain. Now it's time for you to go." Ignacio tried to argue, but the woman cut him off. "Your words are of no importance to me," she said. "All you need to know is that you are not welcome here." Now get out, before I change my mind about being merciful." Ignacio didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his sword and ran back to his canoe. As he paddled away, he could hear the laughter of the woman echoing across the river, and he knew that he had escaped her wrath only by the slimmest of margins. However, not everyone is so lucky. There are many stories of people who have been caught in the boa's coils and never seen again. Some say she devours their souls and adds their memories to her own collection. Others say she drags them down into her watery realm and makes them part of the river forever. But whatever happens to them, one thing is certain: they're never seen again. Most of these stories come from the indigenous people who live near the river. They have a deep respect for the boa. They tell stories of her to warn young people about the dangers of the river and to remind them to always be respectful of the natural world. But there are other people who aren't so respectful. There are scientists who come to the river to study its ecosystem, and they often bring their cameras with them, hoping to capture the elusive boa on film. But the boa is a clever creature, and she's never caught on camera. Every time a researcher gets close to her, she disappears into the water and leaves them empty-handed. But sometimes the researchers aren't so lucky. Sometimes they're the ones who end up on the wrong side of the boa's quails, and they learn the hard way that she is not to be messed with. Of course, this is just one story about the boa. There are many others, and each one tells us something different about the kind of creature she is. She's a creature who demands respect, who punishes those who trespass on her waters, and who takes great pleasure in the fear of others. But she's also a creature of immense power and beauty, and there's something undeniably fascinating about her. Even if we're terrified of her, many people have tried to hunt the boa, but none have succeeded. She's simply too powerful and too elusive. Even the strongest traps fail to hold her for long, and she always seems to know when danger is near. She's a creature of legend, and there is no doubt that she'll continue to inspire awe and terror in those who hear her name for generations to come. So if you ever find yourself in the Amazon, be careful where you swim, and if you hear a strange hissing sound coming from the trees, run away fast. You don't want to be the one who ends up on the wrong side of the boa. Maybe the real boy to Tata is the friends we made along the way.